to the Athletes in Motion podcast, From Race to Recovery, with your hosts, Tom Riegel and Kenny Bailey.
Hey, Kenny. How you doing?
Hey, Tom. How are you?
I'm fantastic. What's happening?
Not much. We got a guest with us today. It's Chris Manderino. He is a former NFL player and currently the CEO and founder of LyfeFuel. And he's calling us from Italy. So welcome, Chris.
Awesome. Welcome, Chris. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys. Great to be here.
So what brings you from Italy? Why are you sitting in Italy today?
Well, I'd like to say that it's to study the blue zones and really immerse the Sardinian way of life, which is parts of big proof. But yeah, I'm going through the process of dual citizenship. My great grandfather immigrated from Italy, and so through the process of Giuria Sanguinis, you have the birthright to attain dual citizenship. And I've loved to travel and really immerse myself into different cultures around the world. I think it really helps me become more knowledgeable and take stuff away from how people live and eat and apply that to what we're doing at LyfeFuel. And I just really love the Italian way of life and being able to kind of spend more time over here, and it just kind of helps me to reset and rebalance every time I get the opportunity to do it.
Right. Yeah, the cyclist in me is incredibly jealous of you that you're gonna so tell me you're biking at least through parts of Italy.
Yeah, so there's I've done a ton of biking, but there's a hike I want to do at Selvaggio Blu, which is on the east coast of Sardinia. I was here last summer and we had the chance to see it from a little Gomino boat, which is just incredible. The water is magical, and it's got these beautiful caves and everything. You can't get to it unless you kind of hike along the ridge or go by boat. Nice. So I'd like to see it from the other side. And it's supposed to be one of the best hikes in Europe. And I can imagine how stunning it must be from on top. So I think we'll probably try to do that next month.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, we're going to talk a little bit today about sort of nutrition and kind of what clean eating and stuff means. But before we get started on that, we'll talk a little bit about sort of your kind of how you grew up and kind of where you were. You were a former NFL player. How did was it sport something that's always part of your family, part of your life, or are you the outlier? Or how did you get to little Chris to fullback, I guess would be the question.
Yeah, it was definitely always part of my life. And so, I was kind of multi-sport athlete as a kid, when I guess you could still do that thing, right? Baseball, basketball, swimming. I was a really strong swimmer and swam competitively. And then my first year of football happened, I think when I was like 8 years old. And my mom kind of resisted because my dad had played football in Michigan State, but had quite a number of injuries that really, hobbled him. And I think he had a slip disc in his back and a herniated disc in his back and his knees. And my mom was also very athletic. She grew up in upper state New York on kind of a ranch there. And my grandfather had built a lake, built everything, I guess, with his spare hands. And so she was water skier and a gymnast and a choreographer and a dancer. And so, certainly in my blood to, have, the genetics were in my favor because both my parents were super athletic. And so, it's pretty much running around from practice to practice. And I have 4 sisters. They were all very active as well. They got into, swimming and water polo very competitively. So, you can say definitely an active family all around.
Was it a competitive family? I know with my brothers and sisters, it was, always competitive to this day, which is sad,
It never.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the competition never quite goes away, and now it's like, okay, if it's not sport related, whether it's like a board game or something, just the level of competition and intensity is through the roof. And you invite somebody over, and they're like, "What's wrong with you people?" It's the game,
It's shut up already. Yeah, you're dancing on their bones. You're like,
but it's funny because like those competitive battles have carried through to adulthood, right? And always, I feel like it's, everybody's trying to beat me and they team up, but it's fun.
That's funny. So why, of all the sports, I mean, swimming, all the other ones, what attracted you to football, despite the fact that your dad, so here's your dad over here, hobbling, and you're like, screw it, I'm going to do it anyway. Or was it just naturally sort of fell in that way?
Yeah, I think it was partly because of, my dad had played and just like a lot of his memories and friendships really came from football. So I could always kind of looked up to that. And then I think there's just something about football once I kind of got a taste of, what the game was all about and kind of that team environment and the physicality, just kind of, I really enjoyed it. It was a much faster pace than swimming. Swimming for me, I just got tired and bored with swimming laps in the pool. And even though I was like really good, I wanted kind of something faster paced and that competitive, like, maybe it's the violent part of it. I don't know, but
the contact definitely adds to it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I think both because my dad had played at a high level and just the sheer love the sport itself.
What position did your dad play?
My dad was a fullback
as well.
Fullback at Michigan State. Yeah, I didn't play fullback until I walked on at Berkeley. I was a quarterback and tailback and linebacker and safety in
in
high
those
school.
days you played everything, right?
Yeah, and then I was kind of coming out of high school. I was a tweener, so I was too small to play linebacker, too slow to play tailback. I didn't play my entire senior year at quarterback, so I didn't know what I could do there. And scouts just didn't know where to put me, and so a lot of those D1 offers that I was hoping to get never came my way. And so, that was obviously a big crossroads in my life to try to determine how much further I really wanted to pursue that goal. I had, a lot of accolades coming out of high school and competed against some of the best players that went on and were getting all these scholarships, but, they just weren't coming my way. But fortunately, Berkeley and a handful of other schools were kind of recruiting me as a preferred walk-on. And so I was really kind of tasked with the choice of whether I wanted to kind of pursue that and, pay for my education and give football a go at high level, or to maybe go to a JUCO for a couple of years and prove myself there, or a smaller 1AA university or Ivy League where they kind of have football as a pastime, type thing. So, it's tough, but I really felt compelled that I could, and I want to play on the biggest stage. And that's what ultimately, drove me to walk on at Berkeley and take that opportunity.
I said you had some success there too, were you drafted? Did you get drafted, or how'd you get into the NFL? Everyone's got a different path. And I'm so amazed by this because I don't think people realize how difficult it is to get into the NFL. And then the second stage is staying in the NFL, right? So what was your ticket in?
Yeah, so my trajectory was, I walked on to Berkeley, redshirted my first year, got my butt kicked every single day, because it's 200 pounds and they threw me in at fullback. I had never played fullback, and I was, considerably undersized. And that was always, a battle for me. But we had a terrible season that redshirt freshman year. So they basically fired the coaching staff and brought in a new coach, Coach Tedford, who had success up in Oregon. And, he kind of cleaned house, and it was a clean slate for everybody to show what they could do under this new coaching system. And we were kind of beat up at tailback in spring football. So I had a chance to both play tailback, which I was more comfortable and used to having played that in high school, and also fullback. And, I just kept working, and, going into summer, the, weight coach pulled me aside and said, "Hey, you're doing well. The coaches are taking notice, but you got to start eating and you got to bulk up, to be able to have a shot."
Yeah.
And so that freshman summer, I didn't stay up at Berkeley. I actually went back home to Newport Beach because, it was all on my dime. I had to figure out like where to stay and where to eat. It was very different, right? Like walk-ons were treated like very separately. It wasn't totally included in the team at that time. Tedford changed all that when he came in. But yeah, I was able to prove myself in fall camp that year. And what I thought would take probably 3 or 4 years just to get on the field, and maybe have a chance at a scholarship in a starting position, was significantly accelerated. And so I was named the starting fullback as a redshirt freshman and put on full scholarship.
Nice.
And then, kind of to your point, right, once you have that opportunity, it's like you got to keep the opportunity, you got to keep the spot, right?
Yeah.
And so there's always somebody that's trying to take your job. And, it's just, I think, through continuous work ethic and trying to continue to put on weight and strength and just do my job well, that ultimately led me to start a school record 52 consecutively started games at that position.
Nice.
Which allowed me, and because of the success that we had as a team, Aaron Rodgers was our quarterback. I fought for 4 other, NFL tailbacks, Marshawn Lynch, Justin Forsett, JJ Arrington. So we led the Pac-12, Pac-10 at that time in rushing every year. And this is when Reggie Bush was at USC. So that's, pretty good accomplishment,
I'm sorry to back up. You were doing fullback for Marshawn Lynch. So
yeah.
So at that point, do you just get the hell out of the way and or was he
pretty much? Yeah. I mean, you got a play called and it's like power right, and Marshawn's like halfway on the other side of the field. Off him, and you're like,
yeah.
You always you kind of got this internal timer in your head, and an average play might last 3 to 5 seconds. So with Marshawn, you've got to add another 2 to 3 seconds onto it.
His legs are still turning.
He's still charging.
It's so tough to bring down. He's literally throwing, 300 pound lineman off him. It's that's why he's beast mode.
Yep.
Yeah,
for sure.
As you're, so you mentioned earlier, and this sort of feathers into sort of, starting the company you have now. I mean, you were told, hey, go pack on weight, go get bigger, because fullbacks aren't 200 pounds, right? They have to be clearly. Also, there's a lot of lower body weight on that one too, I would imagine, right? So a lot of so as you started, was nutrition something that was there's a difference between food and nutrition, right? You were packing on weight. At that point, was it just any weight you can pack on, or were you pretty conscious about it's got to be cleaner, it's got to be better, or was it just pure volume?
Yeah, I was always conscious about it. I wanted it. I kind of had a general understanding of what, clean food was. But the advice that I guess received, whether it's the dietitian or nutrition, it wasn't as well integrated back then as I assume it is now, in terms of having a personalized nutrition plan, that's super dialed into every macro and micro and all that stuff, right? So it's kind of you need to eat more, and it's kind of up to you to determine how you're getting those calories in, because you're burning a whole heck of a lot, obviously, through practice and all the training that you're doing. And so, I sought out, clean or leaner protein sources, but didn't have this, I guess, scientific approach to it. And I think the result of that, when I ultimately got up to 240 plus pounds at my heaviest, you're guzzling down whey protein shakes, you're just a lot of animal protein, and just had major heartburn every time I would eat, and just very gaseous and uncomfortable. And you would feel the inflammation in your bones and every joint in your body. And so there was a time, was really later in life after football, where I didn't need to be 240 plus pounds anymore to hit linebackers and defensive ends in the face, where I was okay, I got to get this weight off. How am I going to do that? And I think when I was in Kansas City, I had, Tony Gonzalez was there, and really got to see firsthand how he was fueling his body. And it was very different than the normal football player at the time. I think he had his own independent nutritionist or dietitian that he was working with. And it was a largely plant-based diet. I don't know if he went vegan or not. I don't think so, but it was mostly plant-centric and just super dialed in on the nutrition side. And I thought that was fascinating, because he, his physique looks like a Greek god, right? And he's obviously performing, at a freakish level at his position. And so, I kind of started to take some mental notes and do some additional research, but it was really kind of going through that experimentation for myself and my own body to try to shed a lot of that excess, fat that you accumulate when you're putting on weight, lean out, but still kind of maintain the muscle mass and everything else. And it was, a lot of bodybuilding books that I read, a lot of just, literature around, nutrition and counting macros and all that stuff. And then, it was just tons and tons and tons of research. And then I ultimately started working in the field professionally for a bariatric nutrition company. And we actually launched one of the first ketogenic programs on the market. This is like 10 years before the big keto craze became a thing, because surgical weight loss doctors were using it as a means for weight loss, medical weight loss, right? To accelerate that. And it was kind of the part of the process that patients would have to go through before they even qualify for weight loss surgery. So it was, just a ton of, I guess, independent researching to start. And then also that physical transformation that I was trying to achieve as an athlete.
Sure. And then, so you go through your NFL career. Was it your decision to stop, or was it the league's decision to say, thank you?
Yeah, it's more, unfortunately. So I sat behind a guy in Kansas City. I was on the practice squad, like worked my tail off. I would actually start all through training camp, which is obviously the most difficult time of the season. Yeah. He would report to camp basically 300 pounds, just out of shape and overweight. So he wouldn't be cleared to even step on the practice field. And so there I was doing his job for him in, Georgetown, Kentucky, 120-degree heat, literally running. I was, there's times when I was the only fullback in camp. So I was running sideline to sideline, basically doing gassers, changing my jerseys in the middle of the scrimmage, because I had to take every single fullback rep in, scrimmage. Right. And those, I don't know if you know, I mean, those are like hour and a half long scrimmages a lot of times in the dog days of summer. And it was just brutal. And so, 2 years of doing that, and I felt like I had done everything, I could to demonstrate that I wanted to be the guy, or at least more involved in the system. But as a fullback in the NFL at that time, there just wasn't a whole lot of opportunities. There was the game was changing a whole lot. So it was more spread it out, run and shoot, right? You throw a pass to 2 yards, and you still see a lot of that now, right? Instead of running an ISO or something up the middle. And so I think there was maybe, not every team carried a fullback. And the teams that did, maybe they carried one on the active roster and then maybe one on the practice squad type thing. So after 2 years, I declined an offer to extend my contract in Cincinnati. I went back into free agency. I ended up signing with the Kansas City Chiefs because it seemed like they had kind of gotten rid of, they got rid of the fullback that is starting with them the year before. They had a new OC come in, a new running backs coach. So it seemed like, everybody was kind of on a equal playing field, and there wasn't, somebody who was already on like a $1 million plus contract, which is the guy in Cincinnati. I think he had one of the biggest deals for fullbacks at the time. So chose that route, and then it kind of battled it out for the starting position there. But a little bit of nepotism worked against me, and I was told to, got all the way down to final cuts and thought I hadn't made the roster. I'm out looking at apartments in Kansas City, and then get that dreaded phone call and say, hey, it's so-and-so, you got to bring in your playbook. And so you just again, you feel just totally drained. You felt like you did everything you had to do to earn a spot. And, unfortunately, the business side of thing didn't work out. And so, you're driving your car home from Kansas City to California, just trying to figure out what's next. And I kind of went into it with the mindset of being where I wanted to be, and being like the start and the guy within a 3 to 4 year timeline, or moving on and kind of putting my education to use and moving into the next phase in life. And especially at that level, it was such a violent, fullback is a very violent position. It really takes a toll on your body. I remember training camp, just I would step out of bed and immediately my head felt like it was in a vice, and every step I took, it was just like another crank on that vice. And, it's just a tough way to earn a living, but
the head and neck injuries for fullbacks is
crazy. It's so, it's okay, maybe there's other, and so if you're not, I guess, on roster, right, because there's such a few number of positions available, a season kind of went by, had some tryouts here and there, but a season passes you by, and then it's like, okay, well, now we've got a whole new, I guess, group of young guys coming in. And so like, what do you're just kind of in that, chasing something without really any true path of whether it's going to work out or not. So that was kind of it for me. I remember, I was studying to take my Series 7. I was going to go the finance route. And then my a former college teammate called me up out of the blue, and he said, "Hey, Mando, I remember you talking about like going over and playing in Italy if the NFL thing didn't work out. I'm going over there." I guess he had a high school coach who was the coach for Bologna the year before, and they were looking for a few Americans because each Italian team could bring over 2 to 3 Americans to be on the team. The rest were Italians. And so I said, yeah, screw it.
Why not?
Why not?
It's good food in Bologna.
Yeah, it's incredible. I was in a tough spot with, the game and just how it had ended. And, it's not on your terms. Very, very rarely is it. Right. And just kind of a bitter taste in my mouth. And so, going over there really, allowed me to play for the love of the game again and really help walk away, on a positive note and really be appreciative of, all the amazing, memories and friendships and stuff that came from football, as opposed to saying, oh, well, I could have, what could have been, but fortunately it wasn't due to a major injury or anything like that. I mean, so,
and especially at fullback position, it's not a head injury, right? It's not the point where, you're retired and your head's still ringing. You see a lot of, obviously with the concussion protocol, with the lawsuit that ensued, right? There was just
scary stuff.
So let's talk about fun stuff. So fast forward, what was, so you're out of football. I know that transition is probably, what am I going to do next? What's going on? How did LyfeFuel become sort of a thing? What 2 questions, I guess. When did nutrition become more important? And then what made you decide that I'm going to take this on my own?
Yeah. So I think the nutrition became more important when I was trying to make those physical transformations post, football. Even though I was performing at a high level, I didn't feel that great. I didn't look, the way that I wanted to. So I knew, I needed to transform my body, and it wasn't the exercise, because I kept, working out constantly. I was still obese, but like until I changed my diet and nutrition, that's really when transformation started to happen physically. You start to lean out. A lot of that fat loss just kind of melted away. And I think that was reaffirmed when I was living abroad in Italy, because I saw, how much differently like they lived and how much different like their approach to fueling and food was versus, what we've adopted, in the US, where it's just like, we're just so thoughtless of what we're putting in our bodies a lot of time, and and even going to like get produce and stuff, it would last just a few days or maybe a week. Whereas in the US, you go to a supermarket and your produce lasts like a month or 2. You're just kind of scratching your head and you're going on, what's going on here? And really when you dive into it, you see it's because how radically our food system has changed in just the past few decades, right? And so I think it was that N of 1 experimentation, going through that for myself, that enlightenment that I had when I was living in Italy, and then professionally getting started in the nutraceutical space with this bariatric nutrition company, that all kind of aligned. And I did that on the corporate side, I basically started at the bottom of the totem pole in customer service, quickly worked my way out into a territory manager position where I was traveling, covering 6 or 7 different states, really integrated to a lot of these practices and educating both the patients and the physicians about the role and importance of nutrition, because in reality, a lot of doctors don't get this knowledge or education about nutrition in medical school. And, and most of us don't get that either, right? It's just kind of what we've been told by friends or family, or, what's been passed down. So I think the approach that they had, and that really the parent company that ultimately buying that business, which was more on the functional side of things, really rooted in science, and they approached it like a pharmaceutical company does, where they have a full staff of PhDs, and they're really starting with the science first and looking to nature to find all these, amazing botanical compounds, and then using those to kind of address a lot of the chronic lifestyle diseases and ailments that we're largely suffering from. And so I was just fascinated by it. I learned so much during that 6 years of working at that company, but then started to realize that there was a much bigger audience that could benefit from this information and this way of fueling your body and approach to nutrition, and not necessarily have to go through, a naturopath or, your, primary care physician to take control of your own health. And I think that also kind of aligned with kind of the way I was, my kind of mental state as an athlete, and just like, hey, people should be empowered to kind of do this on their own. And so that's really, it's kind of tossing around this idea around LyfeFuel, and saw it in that existing patient population where there was a whole host of micronutrient deficiencies that are very common in the obesity and overweight population, but also exist in the general population. So over 95% of Americans don't meet, the bare minimum for one or more key vitamins and minerals in the diet. So I started to dig into why that is, what's going on. And again, it goes back to how drastically our food system has changed, right? And the loss in nutrients in the soil that doesn't get passed and transferred over into the food we eat, and the ultra reliance on ultra processed food. So it's this whole dynamic that is pretty out of whack. And so at LyfeFuel, we wanted to create, a more efficient way of fueling your body that puts back what's missing from food. So starting with the science and really dialing in, okay, what are the key micronutrients that we're not getting even on a quote unquote healthy diet that we can get in a clean and convenient fuel source that's, easy to use on the go, which was, I know, important to me as an athlete, but also important, for, people that are in the professional world or have kids or what have you. Right. Sure. Because that's unfortunately not changing. We're not just adopting the Italian way of life overnight where we have siesta in the middle of the day and everything else. Right. So we're not slowing down.
Well, yeah. And I think, so you're tackling, you mentioned probably the edge of huge issues when it comes to socioeconomics on availability of good food for people. The idea that food is and I've had some background. I used to work in a program with Dr. Dean Ornish, who was looking at nutrition and lifestyle, it's a way to reduce money. But the challenge was also a couple of things. It was around the idea that when people meet at a meal, it's a social event, right? And that it's more than just fuel. There's a factor that's involved, and it's also that family member. So person A may want to say, I need to eat a cleaner diet, but again, it's sort of like drugs, right? They're surrounded by a bunch of people that are eating a bunch of McDonald's and a bunch of stuff. Like, hey, that's great. You want to do that? Make sure you fry me up a burger tonight, right? And when you get around for a meal, it becomes a social event. Especially, obviously, in Italy, it's probably more of a social event, or And so the combination of those things can be really difficult when you're starting a company to say, hey, this is going to help you get those vital nutrients back. When you started LyfeFuel, what was you had to go after a first sort of order of market. Was there a particular, to your point, former athletes or people that are looking to be better? How did you start pinpointing those? It seems to me that there would be you get the easy ones first, and you're going to get a majority of other people, and then you got the laggards behind kind of deal. Is that kind of how you approached it, or how did you start sort of gaining traction?
Yeah, I guess that's in marketing sense, that's how you're supposed to. Okay, here's my ideal customer.
Exactly. You got a persona there. You go after the persona.
And we did some of that, but it wasn't, super specific in that regard, because at the end of the day, when you get down to the science, all humans need this.
Exactly.
All humans need optimal nutrition. So you can't say, okay, this is only for athletes. This is only for business professionals. This is only for, soccer moms. Like anybody who's not got their nutrition, if they're not taking it seriously, something's going to give, right? It's just pure biochemistry, physics, it just, that's what happens. And so what really was compelling to me was Dr. Bruce Ames' nutritional triage theory of aging. And that posits when you don't get the essential nutrients that your body needs on a daily basis, you flip a switch from long-term health to short-term survival. And how that manifests could be different depending on epigenetics, right? And different things. For one person, it could be obesity. For somebody else, it could be, an autoimmune disorder or something else, right? But you can kind of turn off certain gene expressions based off lifestyle factors and the way that you're fueling your body. There's a ton of research around like what's going on in the plant-based world and stuff that I was able to learn firsthand going through eCornell and Dr. Campbell's course there. And really, it all boiled down to the science, right? When you look at the science, there's a very compelling argument to get the essential nutrients that are largely missing from diets back in your body, and to find more efficient, cleaner fuel sources. So instead of like whey protein, we use plant-based protein, and it's all getting those antioxidants, the phytonutrients, the fiber, all these things that we've evolved to eat as humans that we've largely discarded in modern diets.
So, and pragmatically speaking, then what does LyfeFuel offer? Is it what are the products that I could purchase through your program?
Yeah, so it's a pretty simple product line because it boils down to essential nutrition. And so instead of, taking a reductionist approach to nutrition and like a conventional supplement company that's got a different vitamin or mineral from literally everything A to Z, or a multivitamin that's just kind of, like random stuff. So we created an essential shake. What we wanted to do is basically replicate what you should get in a whole food plant-based meal, but in a more convenient form, right? And a lot of people will seek out that product to either give them the nutritional insurance they need and the peace of mind that they are getting all those basic nutritional fundamentals. A lot of people do use it for weight loss, right? To reduce the calories that they're consuming. A lot of people use it for just an energizing, healthy breakfast that, gets them moving and out the door. So it's got a lot of different use cases, but the most important thing is, again, it's kind of laying that complete nutritional foundation so that if you do want some additional supplements or something, it's more of a boost, right? And it's more personalized as opposed to just randomly, popping a bunch of pills and stuff. So that's really our hero product. It's really, the core of our business. And in addition, we've got our transformation program, which is an educational program that really helps to kind of move people away from a standard American diet to adopting a more holistic approach to wellness that's rooted in a low inflammatory, whole food, plant-based diet. And I think it's important to note that, we're not about like any one dietary, theory, right? It's not about just being keto. It's not about going vegan. It's not about, any of that stuff because the perfect diet doesn't exist. Okay. So it's like, what is right for you based off your personal wellness goals, based on your socioeconomic situation, based off genetics, based off microbiome, right? There's it can get very complex very quickly. And so what we try to do is boil it back down to a core set of principles that when applied are going to benefit pretty much. You can't deny the benefits of a largely plant-centric diet and fueling your body with more phytonutrients, antioxidants, and all these, things that it takes to optimize wellness.
Yeah, I've always been pretty amazed that anytime I go out to eat with friends or whatever we got, even the nicer restaurants type of things, I always like to point out to everybody, I said, there's no vegetables anywhere on these plates, right? And the one person that did order it got the 3 pieces of asparagus, and I'm going, and that's nowhere near and it's just, once you start noticing little things like that, every time you go to eat, you go to something else and you're just kind of like, okay, and it's not, like you say, it's not one size fits all. It's not perfect. And it's not like you have to go completely vegan, although it works for some people. You just need to add more vegetables in. So if you're still hungry, eat some more vegetables, just add that part of it. So so you came out, you launched this product in 2016? Did I read it? 2016. Yeah. So were you kind of at the forefront of this? Because I'm starting to see other companies.
We were early. Yeah, we were
summer things. So it seems like you were way ahead of everybody.
Yeah. I mean, there was maybe a couple companies on the market like Vega and was the other one, Garden of Life. But, my challenge with that going through this transition is, I tried a lot of those products. They taste like dirt. So they're like, healthy. And like, I'm not going to do this on a daily basis in most American. So it's trying to balance, right? What people want, desire, right? You want something that tastes good. You want something that, you're excited and enjoy, and like the green shakes and all that stuff. It's just like not very enjoyable. So we're trying to balance art and science. And it took us 2 years just to come out with our initial, formulation and bring that to market. I've been working on a new formulation for just as long, for the past 3 years now. And it's very excited to get that to market because it's included a lot of new innovations that's happened in the space and really using a lot of the customer feedback that we've received for the past 6 years of doing this to upgrade and really, continue to push that edge further, right? Because now what you've happened, this plant-based craze has really taken off. And that was kind of our prediction that, more people would start to, recognize the benefits of being plant-based. Also thought that more people would, start purchasing stuff online and e-commerce was going to take us. So there's a few kind of underlying trends that we kind of shaped the business around. But now that it's kind of diluted, I guess what plant-based is, right? Because now everything's plant-based or everything's got all these buzzwords, right? So it's challenging for the customer at the end of the day to sort through all that noise and really understand, what they're getting in a product. And I think it's good that there's more, options available, obviously, but you really need to, be informed and educated. And most of us just candidly don't ever get that education. So you almost need a PhD a lot of times to read a nutritional label. Sort through what's on the front of the packaging to get down to like, what am I actually getting through these products or, a lot of times packaged food and stuff. So, it's been an interesting space. It's definitely been a space that's been growing a ton, especially in the past couple of years alone.
Yeah, I know. Just trying to get through the reading the labels of like you're fighting the sugar thing, right? So vegetables don't taste as good when you've got that sugar base. You get the sugar out of your system, and then all of a sudden the vegetables taste better. But you can't get somebody over that 2, 3, 4 week mode to get into that mode, and then you find out that on the labels, they start changing what the name of sugar is, right? So there's other things in there and they just change the name. So it doesn't say sugar anymore, but it has these other things that are kind of buried in there and you don't realize it. But once you start looking at all the things that have sugar in it, I'm to a point where I still have a sugar. Like I have a sweet tooth. I try to fight it off, but it's still there sometimes. But I can still like get a burger someplace and I go, oh, they put sugar in the bun. It has no nutritional value, but it has lots of sugar in it. Gosh, this bun tastes great, But it's just this battle that we have. It's crazy.
Yeah. And I think that is one thing that, that's why we have the transformation program, right? And trying to get people to experience that over, a 3 to 4 week period, and you cut out sugar, you're reducing, you're, cutting out the ultra processed foods and stuff. And, once you do, you're kind of retraining your taste buds. And, even with our products, there's, we use a touch of coconut sugar, a little bit of stevia. We're doing away with stevia and transitioning to monk fruit. But like when people have retrained their taste buds, they're like, oh my gosh, it's too sweet. Right. And so it's really getting back to a level of just like those truly natural components. So the cacao should taste like cow, and maybe there's just like a subtle taste of sweetener, but it doesn't need to taste like a Wendy's milkshake or something,
Most
people don't enjoy that once they've kind of gone through that transition.
Yeah, the sugar is not terrible, but it's just the doses
of
too much of
it.
It's just too much of it. I mean, we're endurance athletes. We need sugar for our races. We need sugars to push the distances and stuff. But yeah. So,
but taste is a big deal. I mean,
it's huge.
We make it, at our shop, we make a lot of smoothies, and we've had more than enough protein manufacturers that come to us and say, hey, you got to try this, you got to do this. And they're clean, right? And they look great and the ingredients are great. And at the end of the day, they don't, pea protein that has, pea protein is not going simply, we're trying to get people to have protein-based smoothies and put real ingredients in them. But at the end of the day, taste is king. And I know you need to kind of modify that to a certain extent, but to your point on that 2-year sort of window, how much is that really around trying to nail that sort of taste? And if you have dragon fruit, I'm going to kill you. So I don't know what that is. Is that just I think it's a catch-all for, I don't know what to call this flavor. So we're just going to call it dragon fruit. I don't know. I'm kidding. But how much of that 2-year window when you're doing it is around just making sure it's got a texture and a taste? I know, like, for example, the plant-based burger industry, Impossible Burger was the one that finally nailed it when it came to sort of the sizzle. I mean, isn't it funny how we try to make a plant taste like a piece of meat to get people to plant, but hey, we do what we do. Yeah. So what's that process like?
It's a long process, right? Because we've got a benchmark, right? And generally people do like what we have now. Obviously, we wouldn't be in 6 years later if they didn't, right? And so a lot of people like that. So it's going through, how do we use that, but improve massively upon it? We don't want to just only improve the taste, but we want to improve everything in the product, right? So our goal and our unique approach is around 100% food-based nutrition, right? So getting away from anything synthetic like vitamins and minerals that are chemically constructed in a lab, which is, candidly 99% of the, supplement and nutrition industry is reliant on synthetic vitamins and minerals. And so really want to lead this, next wave in innovation, which is around food-based nutrition. So that, fortunately, there's been a ton of innovation that allows us to do that. Secondly, we don't want to just kind of, say, oh, we've got clean ingredients. We want them to be equivalent from a science standpoint to what you would get in like an animal-based protein, right? So using the correct combinations of proteins. We're currently using pea and rice, but now moving forward, there's a cleaner, better tasting protein source that we plan to use with the pea that complements from amino acid profile standpoint. So you're getting that full PDCAAS score that you would in a whey protein. And then you've got everything kind of dialed in on paper. You're like, okay, this looks freaking awesome. Like, it's going to blow people's minds. And now you're going to like the art, right? Yeah. And trying to make it actually taste great. And there's, different levers, right? You're like, okay, do we push up the cacao? Do we, bring down the monk fruit a bit, and like, what are the inputs that are contributing to that, sensory and profile and taste profile to really nail that. But I did get, preliminary samples just a couple of weeks ago. It is phenomenal. I'm very crushes what we have now from like both a nutrient standpoint, taste standpoint, mixability standpoint across the board. Now we got to figure out the cost side of things and how.
That's what I was going to ask too.
So it's like, especially now with everything going, to the moon in terms of commodity prices and stuff, that's where there's just so much that goes on behind the scenes that you're trying to balance and manage and also kind of appeal to what people are willing to pay for. Because the other challenge is when everything looks, okay, well, this is plant-based and this is plant-based. It's tough to break through all of that noise. And so that's why, we feel we have the most comprehensive product hands down on the market. Now it's just a matter of dialing in the taste and making sure it's still reasonable price point, so that you're getting fair value for your money.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things, and there's a pyramid, right? There's the small number of people at the very top can afford whatever, right? And then there's sort of a mass group of people that unfortunately probably need it the most because again, when you look at sort of blue zones, you use a great example, blue zones, it's great in Italy, it's great in other areas where there's fish available, and there's fruit in, Cleveland, where the only thing within a 3-mile radius is a Popeye, McDonald's,
Right.
those are difficult things to do. So when you look at I know you're looking at price from it's more than just cost plus, it's going to be value, and it's going to be those other things. But when you look at price, do you feel a bit of pressure? Like, if I were able to reduce a little bit more, I can get a wider number of people. And then on the opposite end, have you thought about like creating a halo product? Like, if money be damned, what would that thing, I don't know if you guys play in that territory at all. It's sort of like, but how, when it comes to pricing, you look at the competition, you look at your own, you look at kind of your margins, you look at all that sort of stuff. But do you feel some bit of pressure to also make it affordable to as many people as pragmatic? Would that be the best way to say it?
Yeah, I mean, I think over time we'll get there, right? With economies of scale, right? Cost of goods and all that stuff comes down, right? So what we don't want to do is we don't want to, I guess, dilute the comprehensiveness of our shakes and now piece that into, okay, well, here's your protein, and we can sell, like, honestly, if you're buying protein, you're wasting your money in the first place, right? Because you can just go directly to, a Sprouts, or, I'll put you in touch with a dozen manufacturers that'll sell you straight protein, right? Don't pay a 70% markup to have some brand put their name on a bottle and buy protein. It's a waste of money. What we're doing is completely different, and there's no product on the market that's close in terms of what you're getting. You'd have to put a multivitamin and a greens and berries and protein and all this stuff. So it's really a value-based approach. And so part of it is getting people to understand, recognize, and appreciate, what that's worth, right? So if somebody's willing to go spend $5 or $6 or $10 on a Starbucks coffee, okay, our product should be worth $20 a serving if you want to play that analogy.
Exactly.
Right? That's doing nothing for you from a nutrition standpoint. It's giving you a short boost of energy, and really you should be spending way less than that to just have an espresso without all the sugar and crap in it, right? So I think it's we're trying to do something bigger. We're trying to change this conversation around the way people fuel their bodies, what they prioritize and what they appreciate. And that's, it's not an easy road, but I think where we're at now, we're focused on growing the business sustainably. We're focused on, this concept of essential nutrition. And now we're looking at, okay, well, are there other ways to get those essential nutrients in? So we're launching some bars here in the next couple of months. So they have that micronutrient panel, but maybe that's kind of an entryway where somebody spends, $2-3 on a bar, is kind of recognize and start to learn the story of what we're doing at LyfeFuel. Or maybe that's, a starter kit, right? Where we've got, a sample pack of, a few of our flavors, a few of the bars, and now it's lowering that barrier to entry. And so I see that as a better way to bring people into the funnel, as opposed to saying, okay, well, let's look at what all these other nutrition companies are doing, because I don't think they're doing a very good job, and they're doing a disservice to customers because it's confusing. There's way too many products out there, and it's not convenient. And candidly, we don't need a lot of it, even though we've been convinced we do.
Was there a temptation, given your ties to the NFL and ties to certain players, to just create sort of a premium? Was that something in your early stage where you had to make a conscious effort, say, wait, I got all these people. I know if I make this, I could, sell this at a premium, sell it to people that have nice fat contracts and be able to really keep them, because obviously there's a pretty good market to keep those professional athletes, not just the NFL, but across those professional. Was that when you started this business, was there a conscious effort to go, no, I'm going to try to get this to as many people as possible, or was that kind of crossed your mind?
I think you always have to entertain those ideas. It's not the direct market that we tried to serve. However, like our recovery shake, for instance, is something that I would have loved to enjoy when I was still, playing football, right? Because it was beyond just protein. It's giving me those phytonutrients. It's giving me my vitamin D, magnesium, zinc, B vitamins, a lot of those, micronutrients that get depleted as an athlete. So I think there's always been that there in the back of mind that we love to kind of approach that at a later time, but it's not the primary market that we're serving. And I think that was really due to what I had seen on the bariatric nutrition side and going around the country and counseling, patients who are really struggling with nutrition and were had to take basically 5 or 6 different products a day just to kind of do what you could do with our essential shake now, right? And because compliance, it was so poor, as a result of having to, figure out when to take your iron and your calcium, you can't take them together. And then I had to get my protein, and it's very challenging and confusing. And so when I was actually there, we were trying to push upper management to do something like we ultimately did at LyfeFuel to make a more consolidated, comprehensive product. And, we could have maybe focused on that market to start, which was the weight loss surgery market, but kind of wanted to focus on a broader market, realized that, okay, well, there's so many more people that can benefit from this and really do need this. And so that was kind of the impetus that we focused on that to start.
So is LyfeFuel considered a supplement then, as when you get in the market, is it a supplement or is it part of food regulated by FDA?
Yeah, so it depends on the product. So our bars will be a food-based product, so it has a nutrition label. The shakes currently, those are a supplement product, but I think if we were to do it in a ready-to-drink, those would be a food-based product, right? So just
a confusing line to go over.
A bit crazy, but we really design them to be equivalent to food at the end of the day, but just like the regulatory body that controls it differs based off how they, I guess, look at it and define it.
So is that, I know there's the NSF safe for sport type of thing. Is that something that your product has? Or I know that's ridiculously expensive, but as I work with USA Triathlon, I just got out of a conference. One of the things we're talking about is the supplementation and, of course, the USADA and WADA anti-doping stuff. And they just really, really concerned about the amount of unregulation in the supplement industry. How do athletes approach yours?
Yeah, I mean, for us, like, especially with the new formula, you look at the label and it's like, it's like apple and orange and, so it's like a lot easier to decipher. That's definitely something that we'll layer on. But to your point, it is quite expensive. However, we're trying to get through this reformulation first because it doesn't make sense to pay for it now when we're going to change that. So once we have the new formulation, we'll go through the process of getting all those, credentials, because I think that is what will open up that athletic market further for us. And those are conversations. We've kind of planted some seeds with, obviously people within our close network, but we've got to obviously get the products ready to go prior to pursuing that further.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, it should be a simple thing, obviously, for us, because there's nothing,
it seems like it'd be a slam dunk. I mean, it's just a matter of cost and that,
just what are you willing to pay and all that stuff.
What's the return on that?
Yeah.
Is there two questions. So is there a surprising group of people that you didn't expect to use your product? And on the opposite end, what are sort of what are the 3 or 4 things you always hear on why it's not going to work or why I just decide not to do that? So let's start with the first one first. Is there?
So first question, definitely. So it was actually the more elderly population. So, 65, 70, my parents, right? They have come to rely on it and, they get pissed off at me because we've had so many challenges with like out of stock stuff in the past. So they're like, you can't get people, relying on this stuff and then run out, And we've heard that, and those people like literally just lay into us, and they're right for doing it. And it's cool to see that they have made it part of their daily habit, because that was really the intention behind the product, right? It's a daily nutrition shake. But it was surprising to see how many of those people are, coming to LyfeFuel and seeking this out. The weight loss thing, we kind of expected to some degree, right? I think, kind of all nutrition companies get that, but it was really that elderly demographic where, if you really think about it, it makes sense, right? Because they probably, don't want to eat 2, 3, 4 whole meals a day. So having something in liquid form is a lot easier for them. And, most of them have to, they're now being told by their doctor that you need B12 and D3 and, all these vitamins. So it makes things super simple for them. So, and yeah, I mean, they're some of, I think, our most loyal customers because they, it's working and they just stick with it. And I've had very long conversations with a lot of them. Yeah. It's just like, because it's just the way, we're an internet-based business, but they want to, get on the phone and talk to somebody, and it's awesome.
Do they still drink it at 4:00 in the afternoon? I mean, is that still? Do you have like a afternoon special?
Yeah. But we've also gained some very interesting insights, from having
absolutely.
And it's been good. So the second question.
Yeah, it was just around when you I'm going to use my Valley Girl kind of ew, I don't know if I want to drink my food, or what are those kind of pushback that you tend to have to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're always going to have those, I guess, idealists or, the people that are going to look into every single last, piece of information and find some reason why it's not perfect. And, that's fine, right? Because we also learn from that and have to kind of weigh that. If it becomes a big thing, then it's something that we obviously need to use and innovate because there is enough, pull for that. But I think, people get obsessed sometimes in some little, part of it, whether it's, diet and nutrition, and then kind of forget about everything else. Right. And when we think about wellness, it's not just one of these. So my shake and LyfeFuel is not going to solve, all the world's problems and all your health problems and concerns. Yeah. Right. It's one tool. One tool in your tool belt to live a healthy lifestyle for as long as you can, right? The same way that you can't ignore daily movement or, training your brain through meditation or whatever mindfulness practices. You can't completely ignore any one of these things and expect yourself to look, feel, and perform your best for as long as possible. You just cannot be done. You're leaving something on the table at the end of the day. And so, we feel like we've made an amazing product, based off what we've seen in the marketplace. We'll continue to innovate and improve upon it. And we welcome all criticism. It only helps us get better. But I do think people obsess sometimes over details that, maybe they haven't seen the entire, both sides of the argument, or actually read the white papers about
people don't read. People don't read.
So, and it's so easy to take some of this because there's so many, health coaches and different people on the internet that'll just take one little pitch and blow it up into this huge thing and ignore so much of the bigger picture that matters, infinitely more than obsessing over one little micro detail. But
so to summarize, I can't use your drink to help me deal with the issues. And my parents tell me I had to eat everything off the plate before I can leave the table. So what you're saying is not going to do that. No. So, all right. So there's the major problem.
But the life transformation program might help you, come to grips with some of those deeply rooted behavioral and psychographic.
Exactly. Thanks, Mom. I'm drinking this one.
You can work through that trauma.
I don't like my job. Okay.
Oh, sweet.
So what do you got coming up, Chris? What's other than a new product coming out? Anything else that's exciting?
So I think dovetailing with this new product, it's a brand refresh across the board. So the introduction of what we're dubbing as LyfeFuel 2.0, right? And so that's really doubling down on our core values of quality, efficacy, and sustainability, really leading this movement into the next phase of nutrition, which is a food-based nutrition, really kind of being polarizing against the larger supplement industry and saying, hey, there's a better way to fuel your body. And that's been something that we've been working on for quite some time. And I think that will be our first step to, a much larger initiative, hopefully downstream, which is the personalization of nutrition. And that is, really, really exciting, but that's obviously a lot of work. And there's a lot of, interesting companies that are trying to figure that part out. But I think LyfeFuel will have some role, one way, shape, or form in that conversation. in the future.
Oh, sweet. So, and purchasing is online?
Everything's directly through our website, LyfeFuel.com. That's life with a Y, LyfeFuel.com. We've got like the subscription program because it is intended to be a daily routine. And so there's like the best cost savings and all that are directly through our website. We do sell on Amazon, but the best experience and, best value is always direct through our website.
Yeah, I did check out the website. It's very, very thorough. So nice job on
Thanks.
the website.
Yeah, we tried to go deeper into, the topics and the products and really give the customer everything that they would need to make, a proper decision about whether it's for them or not. And then, even we have like a zero risk, offer. You can buy it. If you hate it, no big deal. We give you your money back. All good. Move on. Try something else and find something else. All good.
Nice. Cool. Yeah. Well, this has been fantastic, Chris. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about
this.
It's great to get to know you and to get to know more about the product. I mean, that's pretty cool. So we're super excited to have you. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having me. And I'm going to have to come check out the recovery center when I pass through.
Yeah, come through Nashville and check out, say hi to Kenny at the recovery lounge.
Like all my friends from California have left California and are all living in Nashville now. So
we know.
Everybody's
we're
kind
two
of
of them, by the way. So
we
nice.
From California. I came from New York through California to Tennessee. So I like to point that out. So that's all good. So, and this is my tagline. So thanks everybody for listening. We really appreciate all the comments and questions and things that come through. So give us 5 stars, thumbs up, whatever it is that helps the algorithms and more people can actually get this information out. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Kenny. And we'll catch you on the next one.